Well, welcome everyone. I am really looking forward to our speaker today and this important topic. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as you'll often hear, DEI, is something that affects the entirety of our lives and not just our Rotary lives. And much of what you will hear today has application in both our personal and professional lives. But still, it's important that we also understand how DEI specifically impacts us in Rotary. So everyone who engages in Rotary, no matter who they are, where they are in the world, or how long they've been with Rotary, they need to feel valued, respected, and welcomed. So I'm going to share with you Rotary's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can also find this on the Rotary website. At Rotary, we understand that cultivating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture is essential to realizing our vision of a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. We value diversity and celebrate the contributions of people of all backgrounds across age, ethnicity, race, color, disability, learning style, religion, faith, socioeconomic status, culture, marital status, languages spoken, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, as well as differences in ideas, thoughts, values, and beliefs. Recognizing that individuals from certain groups have historically experienced barriers to membership, participation, and leadership, we commit to advancing equity in all aspects of Rotary, including our community partnerships, so that each person has the necessary access to resources, opportunities, networks, and support to thrive. We believe that all people hold visible and invisible qualities that inherently make them unique, and we strive to create an inclusive culture where each person knows they are valued and belong. In line with our value of integrity, we are committed to being honest and transparent about where we are in our DEI journey as an organization and to continuing to learn and do better. Diversity, equity, inclusion is not a political issue, and everyone that is joining us and that is with us has the right to be treated with dignity and respect, to have equal opportunities for fellowship and service, and to be given the same platforms for our voices to be heard. So what does that mean for you and your club? Well, it might be different for everyone at this point. In District 6330, our goal for the year is to ensure that each club has the knowledge and access to DEI resources to start conversations, make changes, and of course, remove barriers. So be on the lookout for our one-page resource guide, which will be available on our website. And remember that where each of you are and where each club is right now might be different. It might look different and it might feel different, but these resources can be applied across the board. And we at least want each of you to start to understand and start the conversations. So now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Todd Bowtie Jenkins. Dr. Todd Jenkins currently serves as the Senior Diversity, Inclusion, and Innovation Leader in Corporate America at a Fortune 400 company and as a global inclusion trainer, strategist, and speaker with Bowtie Leadership Incorporated. As a consultant, he has worked with several companies such as Walmart, Google, Facebook, American Airlines, Deloitte, etc., oil and gas companies, small and large nonprofits, and entrepreneurs. He graduated with honors from the University of South Carolina with 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sociology, and obtained a Master of Science from Illinois State University and a doctorate from the University of Arkansas. I have finally met my education match here. His research area focused on minority professionals, retention, and perception of their supervisor within the workplace. Currently, he is enrolled at Harvard University, completing postdoctorate studies as a Harvard Fellow. Also, Dr. Jenkins serves as a faculty member for the Executive Institute on Inclusion and on the Diversity Business Journal Review Board. Dr. Jenkins is a proud Rotarian and Paul Harris Fellow from the Rotary Club of Fayetteville, Arkansas. He has served as the former Rotaract advisor, Interact sponsor, RYLA presenter, RYLA, youth services chair, 2 terms on the club board of directors, and graduated from his district and zone leadership academy. Dr. Jenkins is currently one of the youngest youth exchange district chairs in Rotary International. He has had the honor to speak at various Rotary districts, zones, and international conventions. Dr. Jenkins serves on multiple boards locally and internationally in education, business, and inclusion initiatives. He has recently been selected and appointed to serve on the first Rotary International Committee, DEI Task Force, to align Rotary's diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment, strategies, goals, and initiatives. Today, he is known as Dr. Bowtie Todd, who has given inspirational talks and education to audiences of all sizes and backgrounds throughout North America, Asia, South America, and Europe. Dr. Todd Jenkins is a proud husband, author, servant leader, and conversationalist who believes in his philosophy to bow tie it all together, serve, and simply be a gift into the world. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you so much, Erin, for having me. And I'm not sure, it says that my video cannot be started yet. So if you want to give me the access to start the video, if you all would like to see my face, if not, it's okay. But I am excited to be here, and it is an exciting time for this conversation. So thank you all for tuning in today, and all that will watch the recording. And so what we're going to do today here, my friends, is talk about moving from diversity to inclusion. And just to I know we don't have a lot of time today together, but we're going to have a quick conversation, and then also be able to open up if we have any comments or questions that we can take before the end. And so I would say right now, Erin, just for me to know, you all do see my screen, correct?
We do. Try your video also.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here. I see that it is not, I'm going to try it one more time. How about I do this? Start video, and voila.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. No, it's great. It's okay. You didn't have to really have me on camera, but no, it is exciting to be here. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll have a great conversation. So just a little bit about me. Thank you, Erin, so much for that awesome introduction. So some of the things you'll probably learn about me, and we'll talk about today, of course, Rotary and bow ties, right? But I'm also, as you heard from Erin, I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, born and raised there in the inner city of Columbia, South Carolina. And yes, Erin, I've been in school like my entire life, and I'm still in school. I feel like it's my second office due to teaching and research. But outside of school, I love to go to beaches. And that's probably the only time I don't wear my bow ties is on a beach, as well as, of course, I love to travel. And throughout the pandemic, it's been very interesting traveling virtually. I'm like able to hit, I think the most I've done is 5 countries in one day, speaking virtually. But, look at us now, in the midst of all that's going on, how we're able to still engage and have access to this opportunity. So I'm glad and happy to be traveling virtually to District 6330 today. If I stood up, this is another thing about the pandemic. If I stood up, you'll also see that I enjoy great food. Okay. I really do. I think food is a gateway to cultural success, and I'm all for it unapologetically. I love great food and exploring different cultures and different cuisines around the world. Outside of this, I don't do my exploration by myself, but I do live here in Bentonville, Arkansas. So, Bentonville is the northwest corner. It's the home of Walmart. So Walmart Corporate is actually directly out in front of my yard. It's like just a block away. And so this is home of Walmart, where I live at today. So just kind of sharing a little bit personal background about me before we start. This is also my lovely wife and my partner to do all things life. And so she allows for me to share my gift with the world. And we do have 2 fur babies, Nyla and Merlin, who also keep our attention. And as of 7 months ago, we just added our first human to the family. And so this is my baby son, Mateo. And now he is getting ready to turn 8 months very soon. Wow, so quick. And so just a little bit about myself and how I show up to this space. And like I said, what we're just talking about today is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the bow tie story, talk to you a little bit about some of the things that's happening in the space of DNI, most importantly, what we can do as Rotarians. So a lot of people always ask me, Dr. Jenkins, why do you wear the bow tie? What is up with this kid with the bow tie? Even though I am not a kid anymore, I have my own child now. But I will say that this necktie for me is larger. It's larger than like a bow tie, if you will. And of course, I enjoy to wear it. This is kind of the only thing I can control in my day is the selection of my necktie that I wear. But as I travel locally and globally, people will ask me and they stop me, even in the airport, at the gas station, and they comment about my necktie, or they ask me just some questions and they're curious, did I tie it myself? Some people go as far as to ask me, where did I purchase it, or, et cetera. Honestly, I had this epiphany one day and I started to think, what if we lived in a world where people would genuinely stop what they're doing to be curious about another human that they never met before? Just as they have done daily about my bow tie, this little necktie, this fabric here. And I have seen in research and in practice that that's really challenging for people. It's challenging for people to go above and beyond to speak to a stranger. Sometimes it's challenging for people, of course, we see, to engage with people that they disagree with or don't have anything in common. And so what I did with the bow ties, I created a philosophy, and my students like even name me Dr. Bowtie, but I created a philosophy and an acronym, if you will, of how to have everyday conversations. And it's also going to set our expectations for this virtual engagement today. I'm going to share with you. This is a great expectations to kind of having your daily practice. And it can be applied to conversations or other experiences. So let's get started. The first letter of bow tie is the letter B. In any conversation, you should be mentally present. I know that sounds very like, okay, Dr. Jenkins, we get that, but you will be very, very surprised how many people are physically present, but mentally absent and thinking about other things instead of the conversation. So I ask that you be mentally present, whether you're live today or you're rewatching this. We will ask for your attention. The next letter of bow tie is the letter O, and O stands for openness. In conversation, have an open mind and an open heart. Really allow for yourself to receive information instead of always listening to respond, right? Or react, really, really try to create your openness there. And you'll be also amazed how much that can help you really listen or be an active listener when you come with a little more openness in a conversation. The next letter of bow tie is the letter W, which I really enjoy. This stands for your willingness. It's willing to share your own perspective and own your own truth. I do believe that everyone that's listening today, you have your own story and it's up to you to share it. So I know sometimes we come into conversations and we have someone who's listened and, and really, really trying to understand the other perspective. But I encourage you to also offer your perspective and share your story, because I know that you have a story. I'm not sure if we have any bow tie wearers on the call today, but usually people tell me the most challenging part of this necktie is usually they will point to the knot in the middle. People say it's very challenging to like connect the knot and make that work. And I'm like, it's just like tying your shoes. But I would tell you that this is also what we see in practice, the most difficult parts of conversations, especially about conversations that you disagree with or conversations that, that you may not be as comfortable with, which is the knot in the middle. And no, this is not saying that put a knot in your stomach. Someone said that in my other presentation, but no, this is really the TIE. How do you tie it together? How do you lead the conversation better than you came? And I really do think, my friends, if you be present, be open and willing to share, but most importantly, think about how you can make whatever the experience, better to great, etc. I really do think we can really improve society, really with that simple concept. So that is the bow tie philosophy. That is our expectations for today. And if you like it, you can continue to use it in your everyday lives. So now let's get started with the conversation since we're ready to have a bow tie conversation. So we're talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I understand that it's been several conversations in clubs, several conversations in district, and of course, we're having a global conversation right now around DEI and what that means for Rotary International. But I also understand that we all come to this space very differently. So I want to just share with you very simple what I mean when I say these words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, just so we can have some common language for the presentation. So let's start with the first word, which is the word diversity. What is diversity? So to me, diversity is twofold. Diversity is visible and invisible differences that make someone complete. Okay. So visually, you see me on camera right now. You see a good looking brown guy on camera with a big smile. That is my visible difference. But invisible, you may not know that I'm one of 13 kids. I can hablar Espanol and falo Portuguese, and I'm afraid of heights, but I love to travel on planes. So I want people to understand that diversity is such a beautiful spectrum, right? It's things that you can see, your eye color, your skin tone, your height, etc. But it's also things you cannot see, like your ideas, your belief, your faith, sexual orientation, etc. So I want people to understand that when we start saying diversity, it's very important for us to ask the question, how do we define diversity? What does diversity look like for us as our club members or in our organization, etc. Okay, let's go to this next word that we throw around a lot lately, inclusion. It's like inclusion is on everybody's board, and I love it because inclusion is fun. Inclusion is an action. Inclusion is really creating an environment and a climate where we behave in a way that we respect all these visible and invisible differences, right? And so, and it doesn't just stop with respect, my friends. It really seeks to value, to champion, to ensure that everyone is seen and heard. That is inclusivity at its best. And you got to understand that when I say seen and heard, it's not saying that every idea will be implemented. It's not saying that everybody will agree. But the biggest thing is for people to be seen and heard. You may be wondering, well, why did you put heard in your definition? Well, my friends, how many of you all know you can be doing a lot of talking, but that does not mean anyone is listening? So it's important for us to create that space. Well, you can't talk about true inclusion without talking about equity. Now, I think Erin talked about this earlier, but I work with several companies, large and small, all around the world. And we have a lot of conversations around equity versus equality. And some individuals, they love to debate, that we should not focus on equity, we should focus on equality, et cetera. And some people don't, necessarily know the difference, and that's okay. And I used to bring, my synopsis, my articles, books, et cetera, for individuals to read before we have our trainings at the board meetings, et cetera. I quickly find out that people really don't read before they come to meetings. So what I've done to explain the difference, I try to keep it very simple. And no disrespect, I just lift up my pants leg and I show them my shoe, and I say, okay, let's talk about this. Here's the difference. Equity, first of all, well, let me tell you this. I wear size 10.5 brown shoe, okay? And it feels really good on my feet and it looks nice as well. But when it comes to equality is like, Erin, you get a shoe, Bob get a shoe, Robert it's like Oprah, everybody gets shoes, okay? That is equality. But equity is giving everyone that's listening a shoe that fits them, right? And you got to think about that. I actually have to really create the time, effort, and space to really come ask you, what size shoe do you wear? What color will you like? Do you even want a shoe, right? But think about the receiving end of that. Think about how that person would feel when they feel included and they also get a shoe that fits them where they're at. And so many times that we, when we look at the equitable approach, well, sometimes we try to create a one size fit all, and we understand that may not always work. This due to how people show up today. So I want you to keep that in mind. And here's another great way to think about the differences. You probably have seen this all across social media. It's a great visual. If this is your first time, seeing this type of visual, these are individuals that's trying to, have to see the baseball game, and you can see the differences with the crates or of really trying to have access to see the game. But I show this and I'm like, okay, some people get it. Pictures is worth 1,000 words, if you will. And people still ask me this question. So Dr. Jenkins, I get it. Is this all about propping up the short people? And I'm like, no, my friends, we're not talking about short people. So we have to redesign this, my colleague. And when we're talking about equity versus equality, we're looking at the question and the curiosity around the structural barriers to opportunity. When you think about access and accessibility, right? What is the access even to opportunities? Whatever that may look like in the Rotary Club, in your organization. And I think we got to really have that question and hold up and really look in the mirror and really assess what is our reality? What is the reality of this space in our homes? What is the reality of the space in our communities or in our place of work or where we volunteer, right? We have to really look that into the face. And you may be wondering, well, why are we still talking about this? Why does this matter today for us? Well, it's a strong case for this. Why does this matter? Number one, I would say it's a strong moral case, that is the right thing to do. It's a social case. Our communities are changing. We have a lot more multicultural world. We have a lot more different generational alignment in the workplace. I mean, it's a lot of things evolving. But I would tell you, I met several leaders that does not support the social case or the moral case for this. And I would tell you that one case that been able to stick really well is what we call the business case. And the business case says, if you get this right, you can make more money or save money as an organization. And then you will be so amazed of how many leaders who wants to meet with me after they hear all our research around the business case. And I think it's also a really strong case for us as Rotarians. And it says that if we get this right, we can build a better experience for everybody. And it's a shared value, not only just for our local communities, but for the global world, for every member of our club, and this every community in which we live and serve. It's a case where everyone is included. And guess what? Everybody wins, including straight white old men. Everybody wins in inclusion. And I have to say that because so many times when I talk to organization, it's more of like a us and they, and it's not a we conversation around inclusion. And inclusion is essentially that. It's allowing for everyone to feel as if they belong and be in that space. So I wanted to level set with you all just to make sure we're all on the same page of how I show up to this space around my philosophy around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I told you all, and I think Erin shared this earlier, I'm not here to shame and blame. I'm a proud Rotarian. We're all family here, and we're all trying to do good for our communities. This is why you showed up today, because something was intriguing for you, or also you wanted to come and learn and see what we could do to be better. And I think that's the opportunity that we have here. My background, I'm a first generation college student raised in a low income area. Like I said, in Columbia, South Carolina. I never knew anything about Rotary. And I think, we may have similar stories across the forum today. And I did not understand, Rotary was, I don't remember Rotarians coming to my hood. They probably, I just can't recall. But it's not about, what I probably didn't have. It's the opportunity before us today. And as a proud Rotarian, I want others to be able to have this experience as well. And then when I say others, I'm not necessarily just saying all minorities. I'm actually talking about all people, because I actually know some members of Rotary clubs who have still yet to ever experience Rotary. I want you to think about that. And sometimes when we lift up this conversation, and I think we got to look at both. We got to look at our existing membership and look at that experience as well as who's missing at the table. And so I definitely want us to talk through that. And I will say that when we think about Rotary International or Rotary clubs, right, I think there's hope to do this. There's hope. I mean, we help end polio, eradicate polio, right? And I think we could really, go and help eradicate racism and all isms, right? I think we could do that because it's people like you and I showing up every day to volunteer to be something better than ourselves. So I actually think there's hope to build a more stronger, diverse, and equitable Rotary experience, right? I really do believe that. But I would tell you, we can have a lot of hope, but we also have to have action. And I want to tell you some of the things that, we're doing from Rotary International perspective. And you probably all are aware of this. The board of directors a few years ago set up a goal. They had a goal around advancing women in Rotary and around representation on leadership positions as well as at the club level with membership. And so the goal was to be 30% by 2023. A lot of people ask me, well, Dr. Jenkins, why are we not focusing on other XYZ diversity? Well, let me tell you, it's not that it's not a focus there, but when it comes from my perspective, from the global team, this is what really we have the best data points on of a tracking across the world, right? Which is gender. The next probably highly tracked data point around diversity is age. It's a conversation of adding more dimensions as we continue to mature as an organization. And of course, certain countries, it's really due to local laws and, compliance issues there about what we can and cannot ask. But I wanted to kind of give you all an update of where we're at with women in Rotary, because that is very, very important. And that's a great initiative that we have. As you see across this platform that we're actually, 24% of women or Rotarians across the world are women. But you can look at, it is certain parts of the world that we're still low as 7%. And so we still have a lot of opportunities. And unfortunately, there is some clubs that potentially, I wouldn't say on paper, don't open to, not open to women, but I would say their roster does not have any women in their club. So you got to also think about, when we look at this lens, we also got to think about cultural and systemic issues that are really a part of the conversation as we look at different parts of the world or even in our own backyard. When we look at leadership in Rotary with women, as you can see, we're doing better. We're doing better with our club presidents and our DGs. We're a little bit down with our regional leaders, but we're up on our Rotary International directors. Interesting fact, we found out that and the average it takes to really become a Rotary leader is an average of like 30 plus, well, probably 33 years of Rotary experience. And I would tell you, I'm barely hitting my 30s, and I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to wait until I'm 68 to get to become a Rotary leader. And it is not about position or title for me. I just think that's interesting. And I'm just like, that some things we need to look into that, in which we are looking into policies and procedures as well about, sometimes that could serve as barriers. But I think that's also important for you to think about as a club and as organizational leaders. And as you can see that as of to date, we have not had a president who was female, but we do know that we have President-elect Jennifer Jones that is coming in as our first president who happened to be a female. And it's a lot of other great village of awesome leaders who happen to be women. And as you all notice, is that awesome leaders is what I led with, and who happen to be women is what follow. And so I tell you that because it's very important that we do not tokenize, and we don't go around and saying, I'm promoting you just because you're a woman. No, all these individuals up here are as equally qualified to be in these positions. And it's just so awesomeness the awesomeness that they're bringing. So just keep that narrative in mind. But where we're at today, our president has set out a theme around serving to change lives, right? And what better yet theme, for us, because in the midst of all that's going on with the pandemics that we're facing, the Rotary Foundation is still doing really well. Actually, we raised more money this past year than, and then previous years throughout, for COVID. And so I still think is a beacon of hope, even in our own communities, to be that service model. And that's what we're doing today, right? We're all still showing up in the midst of all that's going on in our community, and we're still providing community engagement and goodwill to each other and fellowship. And so I really think this is a very timely theme. And it's and I think it's most importantly, it's empowered because it says serve to change lives. It does not say change XYZ lives, right? So that's all lives. That's my interpretation. The lives that are in need, the lives that who we need to explore those opportunities. So what I want to do really quickly is just give you a couple tad bit of information around how you can put some of these things around diversity, equity, inclusion in motion. And I also want to be able to open it up for any questions or comments or a conversation with Erin before we leave today. So the first thing I would say, because organizations ask me every day, or individuals, where do I start with inclusion? And I'm going to tell you the secret here. The inclusion, here you go. It starts with the letter I. It starts with the letter I. And why do I tell you all that, my friends? It's because so many times, like I say, we want to look out the window and we want to judge or shame and blame or really examine others, that we forget to hold up the mirror and examine ourselves. And what I'm saying, that I'm not saying that to be critical or not, but I am saying that we have an opportunity to hold up the mirror and ask the question, how do I show up in this space? What am I doing to be an inclusive, ambassador or champion, or be a part of this narrative to help serve lives, right? What is my impact score? And I think it's a really, really important to examine that, because like I say, I believe everyone has a story, and we have to create the spaces for us to share our inclusion stories and our passion and skills. And so I think that's the number one rule, is start with asking the question, how do I show up, and what can I do more of, or what should I do less of, etc. The next thing I would say that I hear commonly around Rotarians is they ask me how to deal with difficult people. How do we change minds in our Rotary Club? Dr. Jenkins, this is really good, but we just have some people in our club, they just don't want to support this. And how do we change their minds? And I would tell you, I do know as a psychologist, you can influence minds, and you can actually help change, and influence the way someone thinks. But it's very hard. It's very hard. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very hard. And it takes some internal engine and control as well of that individual. But here's what I would tell you. I tell individuals, don't spend so much time focused on changing someone's mind, because guess what? You can't really see everybody's mindset. But one thing you can see is how people behave. So I encourage you to lean in to think about, what are the inclusive behaviors that we need as a club, or we should have as individuals in our club, to be on this journey, okay? And what do you mean, Dr. Jenkins? What are some behaviors? Well, behaviors are like competencies, like empathy, being curiosity, exploring curiosity with compassion, creating space for people to be seen and heard. Those are some actions and behaviors that you can adopt. And it's a lot of different models out there that you can think about. What is our inclusive behaviors? So I encourage you to lean into that, because a lot of individuals that I be in conversation with, they tell me, hey, I think I'm a very inclusive leader. And I say, well, hey, sometimes it's not what we think, it's probably what our perception is, to a certain extent. And what I say, if you want to do a social experiment, go on Facebook and like update your caption and say, I am a very inclusive leader. And if all your friends come back and they say under your status, like, did someone hack your account? Are you okay? That means they don't think you're a very inclusive leader. Your perception is a little off. And so I say that all joking aside, but I really do think we have to lean more into our behaviors and how we're showing up in the community. And also, what are we doing when people are not watching? I said this earlier, but I reiterate because this is sometimes one of the most difficult things to do, is to have an open mind and an open heart. This is a muscle that, having an open mind and open heart is a muscle that you have to strengthen, because sometimes when you have been conditioned and you're in a routine to do and think a certain way, your mind sometimes get a little narrow and not as open to differences. And so a lot of people, I had a conversation on a panel in New York on Friday, and I remember someone asking me, like, how are minds changing and hearts changing today? And you will be amazed. Minds and hearts are changing today, not due to the research around diversity. We've been talking about diversity since the civil rights movements and even before. It's really changing today because guess what? Guess who's changing minds and hearts? I guess you could say it that way. Kids and grandchildren. They are changing hearts and minds in this space, because you can't make assumptions, right? You just never know what you just don't know, right? And they are really helping bring in that openness into homes today and families who probably wouldn't have been exposed to that as they were growing up during their generation. Last but not least, I would say we could talk about a lot, but I encourage, since we have many clubs on the call today, is to think about what is your club action plan in this space. First, to begin, you may want to assess your club. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and I know Erin can send it out to the district following this recording. It's some links for Rotary International where you can do a club assessment about diversity for your club. There's also some other links around like training for around like unconscious bias or things around marketing, etc. But put together a plan. Just put together a plan. Yes, it does not matter. You can put together a committee if you would like, but be careful with committee work, because sometimes people believes that only the committee should do all the work. I really think everybody I think everybody in your club roster should be on the DEI committee because everyone should have a perspective. But I do know that depending on how things, get shaped and done in your culture of the club, you may want to have an organized team. But build an action plan. Think of 3 goals that you want to achieve and, before probably for your Rotary year. What you guys can think about is maybe helping diversify your membership with recruitment and this club engagement and experience, and maybe working with a marginalized community that you never worked with or do a service project with. It's also maybe just diversifying your speakers who come in and speak to the club. I mean, it's a lot of different angles to take this, and it's a lot of things you can do. And that's why assessment is very important, so it can allow for you to focus. But as we wrap and close, I know I said a lot very quickly, and I know we kind of went through this pretty fast, but I do want to encourage you that small changes in this space can make a big difference. I have seen this. I live this every day. I see a lot of different organizations, a lot of cultures, and I know you can do it. I'm telling you right now, you can do it. I believe in you. I really do believe you. I believe in you because I believe everyone has a role to play in this space. We all have, you don't have to be an expert to do the right thing around human compassion. You don't have to be an expert to smile and ask more questions. You don't have to be an expert to welcome someone in, right? So small changes in this space can make a big difference. And I'm just so happy that you guys are creating the space to continue this dialogue. And I know this has been a very tough year. And so I would tell you, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not something that should be sidelined in the midst of crisis or in the midst of daily operations. It should actually be in the heart of what we do. And my big, hairy, audacious goal, my BHAG, is to make D&I a part of everything we think, say, and do as Rotarians. I really do think that can really help us continue to excel and progress as an organization. This is my why. You know, my mission is every day to wake up to create spaces for all humans to belong and thrive together, one bow tie combo at a time. But having my son, Mateo, this is why I continue to engage with any Rotary Club, any Rotary District. My son just became a Paul Harris Fellow last month. And we're so happy to welcome him to the Rotary family in that way. But I also think when Mateo continued to grow up and as he continued to experience Rotary, I want Mateo to understand that Rotary is for him. You know, Rotary can be anything that he wanted to be because he feels welcome. He is seen, and most importantly, he's heard. And I want you to think and leave with that note: is what is your why to do this? You know, because that why is going to keep you encouraged in the midst when things get difficult, or you may not see a lot of progress, or people who are challenging you on this notion. I mean, you gotta hold on to your why. And I encourage you to think of that because this really helps me every day. And don't matter what you say to me today that may disappoint me, because I get to look at him every morning. I can't help but smile. And I'm really, really happy that I can see Rotary as an organization for his future, because every day I am working very, very hard to ensure that, just like you're doing in your own community. So my friends, today, I leave you with that thought. Keep your why in front of you. Understand small changes make a big difference, but also think about your own inclusive story and your own inclusive impact. And I always say this: think about your resume, because you want to be proud. You want to be proud of what you're doing in this space. And so I say smile while you're doing it, and enjoy the journey. We're all on a journey here. We all show up very differently, and we all have the opportunity to leave this world better than we found it. So don't forget about how D&I enhance and advance your opportunity. You don't have to do this alone. You got a friend in me. If there's anything I can do to support, feel free to reach out to me. Here's all my social media. You can find me Dr. Bowtie Todd on LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook. Like I said, also all my links will be in the link that will be shared with everyone. Reach out. I'm happy to engage or support you or your organization, because we all have some room to grow in this space. And I'm happy to be a partner or just someone to listen with you. So without further ado, I'm going to open it back up. Here's another podcast that you can check out as well. We did a great conversation. It was like a conversation around a conversation about race with old white men. And it was actually a really fun conversation with Rotarians who were 70 years plus. We had a great podcast conversation talking about some difficult topics. I encourage you to check it out if you're interested. So Erin, I want to turn it back over to you to see if we have any comments, questions that anybody want to submit in the chat to me or directly, or we can have a conversation. So Erin.
Awesome. Well, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them either in the chat or in the Q&A section, so that we can get them answered. So it's really funny, as you were talking, I was writing down my questions and then you kept answering them.
Oh, that was
good. That was great. I did, you were talking about, because one of the things I was questioning is like, what do you say to those that, we've always done it this way, right? But we are steeped in tradition and Rotary. And so what would you say or suggest to clubs that when they're walking the line between tradition and progressiveness in regards to DEI?
Yeah, I do believe that, some people have that notion of like, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. There's a lot of different sayings around traditions, etc. I always like to think about the history of traditions. I think before, my approach is before we so quickly to make a change and a suggestion, I would say first create the space to understand where the tradition came from and the history of the tradition. I would say that what I've learned about certain traditions is that sometimes the people who are great gatekeepers of that, they don't even know how the tradition was created. And sometimes you can get to root cause analysis that it was really something that people just pass down, and they just don't know why we still do it, or they say, hey, we just did it always that way. So I think first starting with understanding the history and recognizing the history of whatever XYZ is. The next piece I think about is leaning in with empathy and curiosity to have a shared conversation around, could we try? Have you ever thought about, what about this to enhance this piece? So one of the biggest call outs that we see in a lot of Rotary clubs is the tradition of invocation, especially in the South. And that's always been a large conversation when I go to certain clubs or districts and speak of, trying to have a practice that's more inclusive and maybe having reflection. And I know some clubs, they could be on this call today, some clubs like, we're not doing that. That's not what we do. And I would tell you that you got to think about the question of everything you all do. Who does this benefit? Who does this not benefit? Okay. You think about the four-way test, right? Something that we love to boast about, but something that a lot of Rotarians don't apply to everything, because it says, is it fair to all? Because that's big, all, right? And so I think you got to start having those questions around traditions or wherever that may be. And I'm not saying every tradition is like terrible or negative. I think we got to understand the history, lean in with empathy and curiosity, offer suggestion, try to come to a shared understanding to have a shared output and a shared solution for best or latest, greatest practice. So that's how I would say how you can approach traditions in a club. Sometimes you got to understand culture. The famous quote, culture can eat strategy for breakfast. So sometimes we come in with like, oh, you know what? This is what we gonna recommend. And then the culture will eat that up. So I think you got to really give grace and space and be on that journey together.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have a club in our district that's a fairly diverse club in all aspects of diversity. And they realized recently that they weren't having conversations or handling situations in the ways that they should have, just because everybody got along so well, right? Like it was just kind of status quo. So what would you say to clubs that don't know what they don't know? And it's so funny, you said it right after I wrote it down. You used that phrase, but I'm just curious as to what your approach would be. As far as diversity, equity, inclusion, they were on top of their game, but they still weren't having those conversations because they just didn't know.
Yeah, I honestly, well, it's a couple of things. Well, if everybody in the club feels like, they don't have the exposure or the thought process of, having this type of intentional conversation, it may come down at a different level, like, from the DG level, your level, or from the Rotary organization, just to, hey, have a conversation, right? Some people can be doing really well. I'm not saying that. Sometimes people think of DNI as a disruptor, like it's supposed to like hit everyone and push everyone in a different direction, because you got to understand that diversity, the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a muscle that we have built very strongly to have in our society. And a lot of diversity, understanding the history, a lot of the diversity conversation was kind of forced in corporate from a compliance standpoint. So a lot of people grew up really with this fight around, us and they. And so I would say that sometimes people think like, well, if we all are, having a great club, everyone feels great, we're doing our service, they may not be aware of maybe the opportunities that they're missing due to lack of diversity or lack of inclusion for their entire community. So I think the conversation always starts with like, how do we define these terms? And then also, what is the reflection of our community? Are we giving everyone in our population the opportunity to have access to experience Rotary and whatever that may mean? Not saying just to become a member, excuse me. Everyone think like that is the deal. Like I need to go recruit. And no. It's not about recruitment. It's really about relations. It's like before you recruit someone, you should try to relate to them. Like that's what we should do. But I encourage clubs like that. That it's not anything bad, but I think it's just something that is an opportunity to just start with the why and the how and the conversation first. And then I think once they land upon those gems, they'll kind of have some concrete things that they can explore from a curious standpoint.
Awesome. So kind of going along with that reflection, I'm a big self-reflection person.
Yeah.
So, how you talked about, the inclusion on your resume and all of that. How would you suggest, we start with the I and really look at what inclusion means to us
Yeah, I
individually?
think it's a couple of things. So I know I posted my link in the chat, and it's a great resource with at Harvard. It's called the Implicit Association Test. It's a free tool. You can go check it out. You can actually Google Harvard's IAT test, and it's a test that really help talk about your assumptions and your implicit biases or associations. And that's a great starting tool of self-reflection, because so many times, like, we like to write down the good stuff that we feel, like I'm sorry, we like to talk about the good stuff. We don't mind writing down, like, this is what I need to work on, as long as nobody look at it, right? Not all people are that way, but most people are. And so this is a great tool for you to reflect, that gives you some associations based on subgroups and categories. And it can really start that conversation with yourself of, why does it seem that I may have an implicit association with this group more than the other, right? I think you can start there. That's a great tool. Of course, I think, self-help on books and literatures and films and museums. It's a lot of things you can do to explore your curiosity of other groups. And, I've met a lot of Rotarians who are pretty exposed with world travels, right? But so many times it's not really the world that I'm talking about. I'm talking about like your backyard, the neighborhood that you don't go to, the neighborhood that you say, oh, we should kind of help them because they're not as fortunate. That is the neighborhood. I'm saying you should go there to try to learn and experience that for yourself. That can also start the journey with that self-reflection and this learning. And then last but not least, I think also some intentionality of understanding like what is your role, right? Because so many times it could be a lot of great conversation and it's a lot of bystanders, or everyone just like, I'm just a student, I'm trying to learn. Well, we need you to be a student teacher. Like I need you to learn and teach others, right? Because we all can be in this space. So I think that self-reflection can also lead you to self-action.
Awesome. So when it comes to, you mentioned club assessments for diversity, would you recommend that's done just internally or that somebody facilitates that for the club?
I think it depends. I think it's great I think it need to be I definitely think it needs to be a partnership. I wouldn't recommend our organization at the club level go and hire a D&I consultant to come in and pay them all these dollars to assess. I think it's great to have a partnership. If you don't feel anyone capable in your club with that skill set, but I think you got to always involve your club members, a part of the discussion. That is key to this whole success of this journey, is involving everyone. And sometimes it's just having a club meeting or everyone is not going to share out loud. So I know people don't like surveys all the time, but sometimes that's a great tool to assess your club through a survey instrument, and then come and report the data, aggregate the data, and give the club something to talk about. Let the data lead the discussion. If you don't want to assess your club, assess your community population and let that data facilitate dialogue. Because I get this conversation a lot too. Oh, Dr. Jenkins, we're in such XYZ type of part of the country or geographical area. We don't have XYZ. Well, I think it's maybe 2 states when it comes to race that is probably, they are pretty up there with it says like we don't have XYZ, and because I visit both of those. However, it was a large immigrant population in those communities of refugees. So you always have data to have that conversation. And I think that is something that I would recommend, is allowing the data to help you dialogue and be okay that if you feel that no one in your club can help, try to partner with other agencies and nonprofits in your community, because there's someone in your community that's doing this work.
Awesome. I loved your last comment about the why and your tie to our youth. I was doing a little bit of research over the last couple of weeks on all of the DEI resources that are available and that type of thing. And there's a video from Great Britain. It's a real short, and I can attach it when we send out our video here. But it talks about the kids and about how they want them to see, what it's like to give back and to be a part of change. And and that's why they involve them in Rotary, which is something that I've always strived for with my daughter too. And so to hear you talk about that with your son too, I think that thread is so important. I love to hear that. I think it was great.
Yeah, I'm telling everyone, when you invite me to come, in person for districts and zones, and even in Texas when I speak at the convention this summer, I'm like, my son will be there. So I hope you all are making space or having someone, and everyone's ready to hold Mateo. So I need to ride that wave for a while until he cannot be, held. But I do love that Rotary is becoming more family friendly and flexible with membership. Those are a lot of tactics and strategies that help enhance diversity. And with stay-at-home mothers, working fathers, stay-at-home fathers, etc. We got a lot of things that we're doing well. So that's why I'm very hopeful, because we got a lot of things we're getting better with, but it's always rooms to stretch and grow. And that's the beauty and challenge of DNI, that you always can stretch and grow. So I know we're at time, but I would say, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully it was something that I shared today to encourage or inform, but most importantly, connect with everyone who listen in or who will watch the recording. As I said earlier, reach out at any time. You can connect with me on any of my links. You have a friend in me, and I love you all. And let's keep up doing the right thing and doing great work. So thank you, Erin, again for having me.
We appreciate you very much. I do want to share very quickly. We are sending you this lovely bow tie for joining us today. And I chose this one. I chose it for a reason in my head, but you talked so much about bow tying things together, and you just talked about linking. And so this one is the links, because we're all linked together, was why I chose it. So it was perfect.
I love that. That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much to your entire district for having me. And I am so glad that we bow tied it together. And most importantly, we will always be linked.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.